All right, new video segment here on musketeerreport.com. Trying something a little bit different. Joining me is Trey Scotti. And if that name sounds familiar to you, it's because Trey was on Xavier's staff a handful of years ago now. What years were you there, Trey? It's 2017 or 18 did you start?
I started fall of 17, and then I was there through 2021. So I
There you
started
go.
with Chris Mack as a graduate assistant, and then I served basically as video coordinator, did a little bit of operations, things of that nature with Coach Steele for 3 seasons following. So
So one of the things when I would like talk to Coach Steele and every now and then you hear something about the guys on staff, something he would always talk about with you was your analytical mind, that you were really good with the analytics and stuff on that end, and also the video breakdowns. Like he would trust you with a lot of set plays and giving all the feedback from all the set plays that they ran in a game or something like that. You had a big hand in that type of stuff. So I thought this would be perfect for your role when you were on staff of kind of breaking down the offense and taking a look at what Xavier's doing. Obviously, you were on two previous staffs, but you just have such a great background in that I thought it'd be really fun to take a look at this stuff.
no, thanks for having me. This will be fun time for us to kind of nerd out. Again, I kind of like watching as much of this stuff as I can. So it's been fun kind of going back, looking at some of their games from the past year, and I'm just excited to break it all down, talk about it.
So set this up a little bit for us in terms of what you want to take a look at, because I think, you think of Sean Miller, and one of the things that I'm most impressed with that he did was he took that year off after he left Arizona, and he's done podcasts about this. You can go see him talk about it, but he basically said, like, I took a look at the way everyone was playing. I loved Gonzaga's style of offense. And quite frankly, Tommy Lloyd, who was the longtime assistant under Mark Few, who took over for me at Arizona, I loved what he did with the Arizona team that he took over of mine and the success that they had. So he really kind of took a lot of that style of play and implemented it into his new system here at Xavier, didn't he?
Yeah, no, it's going to be really interesting to see how they do going forward because just as you said, him and Archie Miller, they were on their podcast, did a video breakdown of Gonzaga's offense, and I'm sure he was obviously paying attention, having watching his former players at Arizona, and really I thought it fit extremely well with the personnel they had for this season, especially with Nunji and Fremantle coming, both in the season relatively healthy, maybe as opposed to the previous seasons before with two guys who are that skilled. And it's like in the video with those guys, they had Drew Timme, who's obviously an All-American, Chet Holmgren, right, top pick in the NBA. And so I thought it really utilized their skill sets and really translated over. So it'll be interesting to see. I haven't watched, anything from their foreign trip, and it sounds like they're continuing to use the offense, but it'll be interesting to monitor it going forward, just given positions of strength on the roster and if they continue to go this route. But obviously, analytically into the eye, they did pretty well with it last year. So
Definitely. So what we're going to do here is we're going to bring up video clips from last year's team, and Trey's going to kind of break this down for us. I'll interject a little bit, but we're just going to talk through it. Hopefully you guys will find some value out of this. So Trey, go ahead and take it away. We'll start by looking at these video clips.
yeah, and I want to start by talking about transition. I think, that's kind of the first thing a lot of coaches will implement, right? When they're starting to do what they're doing in a team setting offensively at the beginning of practice or fall workouts, however, they really start to go into the team setting and things of that nature. But what I would say is, Xavier was really efficient offensively this past season. It wasn't particularly that they played incredibly fast. I just got a couple of very simple numbers up here, but you'll see they were 58% in usage in the country. So again, they were 58th percentile. They're playing a little bit faster than the average team and getting things in transition, right? But it's not like they were just like, going up and down the court, shooting the first shot they could every single time, no matter what. I think their transition success kind of came in two segments. Number one, they had some good players, right? So Colby in particular, and we'll show a couple of clips of him to get going, but he was very efficient, just finishing, getting passes up the sideline, getting a rebound or a steal and kind of converting that on his own. Boom and Kunkel in particular did a good job kind of getting loose, finding some threes. And then I think what's going to make their offense unique is really Zach and Nunji started off the year. They did a really good job getting post position early in transition for catches, but also, and we'll kind of get into this, through the film, they opened up drives with that as well. But you're not going to see a ton of teams with two guys like Zach and Fremantle or like Zach and Nunji. So the way they used those two, I think, was pretty effective. And like I said, just letting those guys get down the court and maybe get the ball for a post catch, number one, but number two, just being physical, sealing, and that ultimately creating driving lanes. So again, I think obviously Colby was a really good player, right? I mean, getting drafted by Sacramento, he's already off, to a good start in the summer league. They gave him a contract. I mean, part of this, right? It's not always X's and O's, Jimmy's and Joe's. Colby just getting the ball, making plays. Okay, like this is kind of their standard spacing, but at the end of the day, when you lose a guy like this, this is going to be a big impact on your team and just the ability to kind of make plays. And there's a good advance by Kunkel on that pass up the sideline, which again, I'm sure that's something they drilled at nauseum. But again, here's Colby just kind of changing sides of the floor, getting to the bucket, kind of doing what he does. That's after a made shot. So if we run this back, here's Boom, does a great job just throwing that thing right up the court. Again, you're going to be able to pass the ball up the court faster, and you'll be able to dribble at any time. And if you just go throughout the entire season, right, I picked 7 or 8 games to watch, but Colby was a focal point, getting easy baskets, did a really, really good job. As good of a season as maybe Boom had. He's not a guy who's getting there for a lot of easy twos, right? He's more of a jump shooter. So in particular is where Colby thrived. Kunkel was a part of that as well. They also did a good job hunting threes. Again, Boom, had an incredible year shooting the ball. Xavier was one of the top 3-point shooting teams in the country. He really had a knack for making shots in that position. There's another advanced pass to Kunkel. Him just doing a really, really good job, getting loose, has a quick trigger. That's one of Kunkel's strengths, right? And it just kind of starts every team, right, in the country for the most part. They're going to get layups in transition, open threes. Not many teams are going to avoid those situations, but that was obviously a part of what Xavier did. And so it'll be interesting, right, to see how they replace those players' productions going forward.
So one thing I would say about that, Trey, is like you mentioned, they're not necessarily flying up the court on every possession and just looking to play, 90 minutes or 90 feet, 40 minutes all game long. But this is something, to your point, that they drill nonstop. Like every practice starts with those advanced passes up the court. They want to be super opportunistic that whenever those chances do present themselves for an easy layup or the opportunity to get it into the paint for a quick foul and put pressure on the defense in the paint, they want to take advantage of those opportunities. So that's something that definitely is a huge part of their summer workouts and every practice that they have.
For sure. I think probably the biggest strength of this offense was post play. And I mean that in two areas. Number one, what you're thinking of, throw the ball in the post, score it, pass it out, get a shot, right? Obviously, having guys like Zach, having guys like Jack Nunji, and honestly, Jerome came in, did a terrific job filling into Zach's spot when that injury occurred. And he took a lot of what his role was, not only minutes-wise, but they were posting him. He was scoring. He did a terrific job. So Xavier was in the 90th percentile of post-up usage, right? So they're throwing the ball in the post a ton, but they were 89% in points per possession. So not only are they throwing it in there a ton, but their productivity, once they get the ball in there, they got a lot out of it. But what those analytics aren't going to tell you is, and that's from Synergy, by the way, how often they were able to seal off a help defender on a duck in, and they would drive the ball in, right? And so, everybody's always talking spacing. John Calipari is one of the big people talking spacing back in the day, 4 out, 1 in, yada, yada, yada. Xavier's offense, both in transition and in the half court, are unique. Is they're constantly ducking in on that backside. And there's a tax to pay for anything that you do, right? In basketball, like you do one thing, you're sacrificing maybe doing something else well. And so, they paid that tax of maybe taking out, spacing at times for drivers, but they did an incredible job all year holding guys with their seal on those post-ups, and really it became the identity of their offense, I thought. And they did a really, really good job. So you're going to kind of see here, again, they're running in transition. There's Zach posting hard. He's got 2 feet deep in the paint. That's just where you'd want him posting up, right? Okay. And, again, getting him right into him quickly from Colby. He does a terrific job. In this Indiana game in particular, they got a ton of post-ups in transition, running the floor. Again, just getting it right into a really good player. Catches that thing in the circle, right? I mean, that's just how you draw it up in terms of where you want a post player to catch the ball, especially a guy like Zach.
So Trey, when you're saying duck in, this is a terminology that gets used a lot in college basketball. You hear it all the time by broadcasters. I don't know if every fan unnecessarily understands it. That's exactly what we're talking about right there, what Zach's doing. Just that quick post up on your guy, trying to seal him off and get the ball quickly, right? Establish position in the post.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. And again, like I said, this clip is showing Zach scoring the ball, but it had a lot of different uses for this offense throughout the year, both in transition and in the half court, which we'll get to. So here's that clip again. Again, really deep catch, and not only that, I mean that he's going against Race Thompson from Indiana, who's a terrific defender. So that's just a big time play by Zach right there. Here's another one. Like I said, the Indiana game in particular, they did a really, really good job pushing the tempo, getting the ball inside. So again, they're just getting the ball inside right away. Right, guy over helps just a tad bit, laser out to Kunkel, 3. Right, I mean, Matt Painter says it all the time. If you're one-on-one in the post, score that thing, you start to get doubled, you kick it out. Pretty simple concept, but when you have good players, it can be become pretty effective. So same kind of thing. You're going to see Jerome here getting an early post up, throwing it right back to Nunji, shot. And that's just another element of Xavier's offense that was unique is, yes, you did have guys that posted up and they posted a ton, but it's not like any one of Nunji, Fremantle, and Jerome didn't shoot a ton of threes this past year, but you can't just leave those guys. Those guys were still effective, post spacers. So that's another thing is, okay, we're going to play with maybe 2 guys who are more bigs that you're actually going to play through the post, not necessarily going to drive by guys off the bounce, or you're going to design your offense around that. But they did not have to sacrifice really much spacing at all playing that way. So there's Nunji hitting a trail 3.
Trey, that clip you just showed where they look inside quickly and then you get a quick 3 off of it. How much does looking to pound the ball in on these quick duck-ins, how much does that open the quick transition 3s like this? Does that force the defense to really honor defending that post in their transition defense?
Well, for sure. And you'll just see here, there's like a little bit of confusion, just a hair confusion. Who has who? Okay, someone's picking up the ball. They're not really sure who's picking up Jerome. There's number 13 there. He's kind of under the rim. He kind of starts to take him for 1 second. A guy coming all the way from the top of the key, he starts to. Okay, now they kind of match up. And now on the weak side, you've got 2 of their players with Kunkel, 0 with Nunji, right? And transition defense, that's why teams, that transition teams they're really hard to, it's really hard to be effective on that end defensively. Teams will work on that every single day. It takes communication, effort. You got to sprint, right? And so if you can throw the ball down there in transition, number one, that's a tough cover, right? That's why we talked about teams. Pretty much every team is going to want open 3s in transition across the country. Very, very few teams out there are passing that up in 2023. But on the same token, ball goes inside. Okay, it's really difficult to guard the ball going back out from the post, right? Most teams, 7th grade, high school, boys and girls, everybody's working on gaps, some form of the pack line, more times or less, whatever your defense is. Very rarely are you doing drills where the ball is on the post, right? Ball is coming out. Defenders are not as used to being in the position, right? I've never seen a team that's going to spend just as much time on defensive positioning from a post up as they would, versus defensive positioning when the ball's on the perimeter. But again, most teams are not throwing the ball into the post a lot. So if you're a coach going into your season, you're going to obviously spend as much time guarding things you think you're going to guard throughout the season. So I know that's a long-winded answer, but to get a post up and transition, I think you're kind of putting the defense in multiple situations that are tougher to guard than just your average half court set. So, but again, there's another good kick out, like we said. Moving on. Again, Indiana, here's off a make. Again, there's Nunji. He's posting Trace Jackson Davis, one of the best players in the country, to the high side. So earlier we had Zach with a guy on his back. Here's Nunji stopping on his tracks in the Big East, at the Big East logo. Claude throws a great pass over the top. Nunji just kind of gets big, misses the first one, but again, you get in that close to the rim, you're going to always have opportunities for easy offensive rebounds. So that game in particular, they did a terrific job. Here's Zach running really, really hard. Here's a nice play. Here's Kunkel with a very good skip, right? Kunkel had a really nice knack for making quick basketball plays. You'll see Zach, he's got a guy on his back. He's going to flip around, hold his seal or his duck in on that side. Here's Colby, does a good job getting him the ball. Again, that's really, really, really tough to guard. And if you go back, you've got Colby feeding the ball, who's probably Xavier's, worst shooter on the court last year at this time. Okay, it's going to be tough for his guy to come in and help unless he's just going automatic. Then you've got Kunkel, boom, Nunji, weak side. You've got Zach playing one-on-one against a guy who's not even his matchup. I don't believe in that situation because, again, in transition, it's hard to match up. sometimes you just got to go by the guy nearest to you. So you're really putting the defense in a tough spot by playing that fast. So got a couple more just clips from these situations. Again, another duck in, kick it right back out. You'll see here they go to a double right away. So this is Pittsburgh in the tournament. Ball's on the wing. I believe that's Greg Elliott, the Marquette transfer. Ball goes in. He goes for a double right away. Right? There's no hesitation. That was probably a game plan they had at that time. They don't rotate. Again, Kunkel, good shooter. That's a pretty good offense there. Now we'll see a couple of those clips off the drive, right? This is where the post-ups can continue to be effective. Here's Nunji. He's posting to catch the ball. Absolutely. But boom on this drive, again, a lot of people think, okay, spacing, that's going to open up the floor for drives. In this situation, he holds off his defender, and again, boom gets a wide open point-blank layup. They probably had to have had as many shots as anybody at the rim in these scenarios all season. They did a terrific job. I think that's really, really impressive because, rather you're recruiting a Nunji, a Fremantle, anybody at any school, right? I don't think you're exciting guys. But, hey, listen, we want you to come in, duck guys in, open up lanes for our guards. It's a very unselfish act. There's no stat out there for it. You're not normally getting Instagram edits, or that's not, hitting highlight tape. So that's a it's just like a screen, right? A very unselfish play. And then they were incredibly effective in that area all year.
It's like a screen, but it's like a moving screen that's super effective. And your timing has to be right on this so you don't get called for a moving screen. But let's face it. I mean, there's so much happening, and it's oftentimes happening in transition. So the refs are sprinting back, trying to watch multiple things. It's something that you're going to get away with more often than not if you do it correctly, and it's something that you drill and you make it a part of your offense like Xavier has. I'm almost a little bit surprised after watching how effectively and how often Xavier did it last year that every team in the country doesn't try to use this more often within their offense, because it is so effective.
Yeah, no question. And there, like I said, there's a tax to pay for anything that you're doing. So I think some people, right, like they just feel that they've got guys who shoot the ball so well, and not everybody is playing a guy maybe at that 4 spot like a Zach. Who is like Zach's very physical, right? He doesn't weigh particularly a ton, but like he's not afraid of contact at any moment, right? And so I think that's a little bit playing to their strengths, right? That's a little bit, just putting in a good offense. But yeah, to your point, it is a little bit surprising, but it's a really tough thing to get kids to buy into. Here's a similar, advance to Colby up the sideline again. We've seen that where he's just looking to score with an empty paint. But here's Zach. Okay, he's thinking score on this, no doubt. But there's no weak side corner. There's no offensive play there. You'll see Kunkel and boom, they're lifted, right? So you're not going to get any help from that weak side in transition. So really, the only chance of a helper would be Race Thompson, who's guarding Fremantle, swinging over from the post and picking him up. But Zach does such a good job sealing him off that Colby's basically in a one-on-one situation in transition. Again, guarding an NBA player in transition like Colby, that's pretty tough to guard. So the other thing they did incredibly well throughout the season, they got to a ton of high lows. And some of these are kind of transitions. Some of them, they're kind of getting into their flow. It's a little bit of gray area, if you want to call it half court or transition, I think. But they did a great job. Like, for example, okay, big one, in this offense, right, we're saying there's kind of 2 bigs on the court at most times, and that would have been Fremantle, Nunji, Jerome. More times than not, they'd have 2 of those 3 guys on the court, right? And then you saw a little bit of Deontay, a little bit of Cesar Edwards throughout the year. But for the most part, those 3, when healthy, were occupying the minutes. Obviously, we've seen what the first guy's going to do. They're occupying the paint. They're looking for a post up. They're trying to seal or duck in to get a catch or create a path for layup. The second option, or the second big, is always trailing, right? Offensively, they may go through that trailer. That guy may make a play, make a shot, have a drive. They may reverse and get into their flow. But one of the first things that they look for is high-low, and you can tell they drill this. Again, Nunji catches that after transition. His eyes go right to Zach inside. Terrific seal. And again, high lows are effective because it's harder to double team. All right. So if the ball's coming in from the wing, okay, you may double. We saw that clip from Pittsburgh. That guy, that passer, he's going in right into double. A lot tougher for the guy guarding the passer to double from the top. Also, when you're coming from the top, there's really no weak side help either. Okay, so if we go back to where the ball's in and Nunge says, there's no, Boom's guys kind of cutting through. That would be a really tough adjustment for him, and he had to be really fast on his feet. A lot of coaches will go high-low when someone's helping from the backside, right? Because, again, you're avoiding that double team. And, again, so Zach catches it. Okay, number 2 from UConn, he kind of realizes last second he tries to get back in the play, but when you're catching the ball inside the charge circle like that offensively, that's a tough spot for the defense to be in at that point.
Well, and how important for Xavier last year was it that Jack Nunge was the guy oftentimes playing in that trailer spot at the top of the key, to where he's a threat to hit that 3-pointer on you. So the opposing center oftentimes, or maybe sometimes it was the power forward, depending on the matchup, had to be out on the perimeter guarding him. That takes away probably your best weak side shot blocking option to protect the rim, right? If you are trying to offer help on that high-low pass.
For sure. And that's why you see the NBA, right? One of the best things that you can do against a Rudy Gobert or these shot blocking guys is you try to draw them out with shooting and skill and put them in positions, right, where they have to guard on the perimeter. And even if they do, we see all these guys who are mobile and athletic at the higher levels, but if you can just pull that guy away from the basket and not let them sit in the post, to your point, right, that there's a ton of great spacing opportunities. So here's another one. Again, you see Nunge, another terrific pass to Zach. Terrific positioning. Zach's an animal down there, man. He does a great job. So last clip I got for this one, again, same kind of thing. Here's Jerome. Okay, he does have Kalkbrenner on him, one of the best shot blockers in the country. Nunge throws that thing right in there. And again, this is impressive, man. Going against Kalkbrenner for Jerome, getting a bucket, obviously at Creighton or against Creighton in the Big East tournament was one of the best offensive games of the year that Xavier had, and credit to Jerome for coming in. And yeah, the offense, I think, did take a little bit of an analytical dip when you went him in for Fremantle, but I got to say I was pretty impressed with how he played overall stepping in. So I think the next element that's worth talking about is the flow, and this goes back to what we were talking about, where you're going to see this more at Arizona. You're going to see this more at Gonzaga. A lot of different teams have a lot of different flows, right? It's just there's multiple opportunities. Number one, you get in transition, you don't have something. A lot of teams are going to go right into a flow. It's like, hey, we try to get the easy bucket. Teams don't want to pull out to the top and call out a set because that can be kind of slow. It's like, hey, we're getting right into our flow. Number two, you may just come down and say you're in your flow. I don't know what Xavier calls it. Let's make it up. Let's say they call it X. They may come down, hey, we're in X. Now everybody knows, hey, we're right into sort of our base offense. The last thing could be when you run a set play. Let's say, hey, you're running a specialty play to get a post up or a 3 for Kunkel. You don't have something. Okay, there's 15 seconds on the shot clock. What's the answer? We're back into X. We're back into flow. So those are kind of the situations, right? You're going to see those come up the most. Miller talked about on that podcast in particular. He was really impressed with how fast Gonzaga played into their flow. I think it's a really difficult thing to teach. Again, not that this matters for anything, but me coaching high school, the last 2 years, I think one of the hardest parts to coach is kids when they don't have option one, flowing right to option two without a hesitation. I think that's one of the hardest things there are to coach with kids right now. And so that was obviously a priority. You could tell they went right into their flow. No blinking. And again, a lot of ball reversals. A lot of guys touching the ball, a lot of action really fast. That's going to be really, really tough to guard. So I'll kind of start it off with the high-lows. These are similar clips, right? So they're thinking flow right now. And in this flow, they always have, like I said, they have their 2 bigs in there. One guy's usually occupying that reversal spot. They're going to play through him. The other big is going to post up. These guys are going to be interchangeable on reversals, right? So Nunge, in a lot of cases, he may come play to this other side, right? So now you have 2 guards on the opposite side. Looks like Colby and Kunkel, okay? Now, when he plays to that side, a lot of times Zach, he's got options he could raise. A lot of times he can duck in, which we'll talk about. But the first look, again, this is kind of just like the transition clips we just watched. Jack's looking right in. Another terrific post by Fremantle. Incredible hands, incredible catch. No help. Again, high-low. It's really tough to send help in those situations. And to your point, right, having to get 2 guys like this that can post up, how many lineups out there have 2 versatile post defenders? It's just not, when coaches are out recruiting on EYBL or Adidas, that's not a priority. Hey, we need to defend multiple posts. It's very unique, and I think it's one of the reasons that made them such a tough matchup offensively. Same clip here. Again, crowded side, things kind of break down, but Nungy's just kind of looking in. Andre Jackson, right? NBA, going to be an NBA player, NBA draft pick, whatever. He might have been this year. I can't remember. But point is, that guy is built to guard wings, right? And certainly, UConn obviously is hoping that he can guard post. He's one of the best defenders in the country. But at the end of the day, that guy's going to be in the NBA to guard wings. You know what I mean? So to have Zach, that can be a big help. Now, this is an under out of bounds play. So again, they're running something, right? You can tell, okay, play doesn't break down. Now, we don't have what we were looking for out of that set. What do we do? We're right in the flow. So you'll see Jack kind of sets that screen. Jerome, the other guy, he replaces up. Now he looks high-low. So again, this is kind of that same formation we just saw a transition, right? You've got one big inside, one big at the top of the key, and then your guards, you've got a 2-guard side at all times. You've got a 1-guard side at all times, and you're spacing it out. This is unique because this is against a switch, okay? So you see here, Boom uses the screen. X5, the defensive center for Providence, he switches on. Now you've got a point guard on the Nungy. He can't rematch. Now Nungy knows he's got a mismatch, right? He's showing his hands. Good recognition here by Jerome Hunter. You can see Boom on the wing. He's even pointing inside like he knows there's a mismatch as well. They do a great job hunting out that switch. And again, that's why you don't want to have to switch guards on the guys like Nungy and Freeman. They're too good. They're too smart. And at the end of the day, that's why switchable defenders get paid, right? In the NBA, a guy like Najee Marshall's doing terrific with something like that. But there's just not a ton of guys at the college level that are going to be able to guard a guard like Boom and then switch on to a guy like Nungy. So I'm sure that's not what Providence wanted, but in emergency situations, that's going to happen.
When we're talking about the role of Xavier's bigs in this offense, it seems like mostly they're looking to duck in, which we talked about that, the seals, the high-low options, that type of thing. They can replace each other. So going from the low block to the top of the key, and they'll reverse the ball within the offense. And then they're setting screens mostly, right? A lot of pick and roll stuff. That's kind of what the bigs do within this flow offense for Xavier, correct?
Exactly. And you'll see some teams, right, that they'll try to put their bigs in space for different opportunities. Some teams are very, very heavy pick and pop. And while Zach and Nungy could both do that, it wasn't necessarily something that you're seeing them try to do possession in, possession out. So, some teams, like I said, they're a little bit more 4 out, 1 in, one guy posting. The other big is more of a cutter. It could be like a 6'9", stretch 4 is more of a shooter cutter. To your point, those positions they put at the 4 and 5 were very interchangeable in this flow offense.
Yeah. So one more quick point on that. If you remember the All Access broadcast that FS1 did, that was against St. John's, you heard Sean Miller talking a lot in the first half of that game as don't forget about the middle third, play through the middle third. And what he's talking about there is on offense, a lot of times coaches will divide their end of the floor up lengthwise into thirds, right? So you got the left third, the middle third, the right third. And this is a lot of the stuff he's talking about, right? Is these high-low options, the quick duck-ins, maybe the ball screens and driving the ball through that middle of the third. But forcing the defense to guard that middle third is essentially what he was getting at in that St. John's All Access broadcast, right?
Yeah, no doubt. I didn't get a chance to watch that with volume. I think I was maybe traveling or something and had it on without any volume at the time. But absolutely, and again, just goes back to that point, the high lows, right? There's no traditional help. A lot of teams, right? You have your balls. I think ball screens can be really tough to guard in that middle third where the help's coming from. I think it's a little bit more cookie cutter on the sideline. Teams know exactly where they're forcing it. Teams know where the help's coming from. And not that teams don't work on middle ball screen coverage. They certainly do. But I think there's a little bit more room for confusion and error in that middle third as well.
Especially if you have an aggressive ball screen defense. If you're trying to hard hedge, it's really easy to get strung out and have a lot of options when you're running that middle ball screen. And
yes.
And again, that's Xavier's bigs play a lot through the middle third, whether it's rim running, whether it's the high-low stuff. That's when you hear middle third in Xavier's offense, a lot of times they're talking about get the bigs involved or play through some of these options more.
Right, no doubt. And there's some clips down here we'll get to at some point with some aggressive ball screen coverages and what they did against that. But again, here's Des Claude, again, guy who's probably going to take a big chunk of that Colby role offensively in transition. I mean, he is terrific off the bounce. Okay, he doesn't have something he's looking for. Okay, he reverses the ball to Deontay. Deontay's not a guy, right, shooting. Doesn't feel like he's got a high-low. This is one thing we saw a lot was a zoom action. So a zoom action, again, a lot of people call this different things. basically you've got Kunkel setting a pin down for Colby in this situation. Then you've got Deontay who's going to go right into a handoff. Basically, in these situations, if you're Kunkel, what you're trying to do is you're trying to get Colby's defender to go over the top, right? Ultimately, you want to get Colby with the ball going downhill. If that defender can chase over the top, right, he's not going to be able to cheat that, go underneath, and prevent that. Now, again, there's attacks for everything, like we said earlier, right? You go under, you're giving up different things. You go over the top, you're giving up different things. But for the most part, that's kind of Kunkel's goal. Make that defender go over. You'll see a lot of times teams will straddle the 3-point line with that screener. Deontay, hand the ball off. Same exact thing. You're straddling that 3-point line. Okay. Now you've got Deontay rolling in this situation. And Deontay was always going to be a roll guy. You've got Kunkel filling up behind in that shooting role, right? So let's just look at the three guys on that side for just 1 second, right? So now you've got the defender guarding Deontay. He's got a decision to make. He can come up. If he comes up, Colby's thinking hit the roll. Okay. He's also reading Trey Galloway. He's the defender guarding Kunkel right now. If he were to help in on the roll, he's thinking hit Kunkel, right? Where Xavier continued to do a great job in this offense, you'll see now we go back to the opposite side, right? You've got Claude, who didn't have, he wasn't necessarily a guy on the top of the scouting report shooting wise. So his defender, Tamar Bates, he's playing heavy in the gap in this situation, right? He's thinking stop Colby off the bounce is more of a priority than Claude shooting a three. But you've also got Zach ducking in, similar concept, just like we talked about in transition. He's holding off his defender. Colby misses it in the paint, but again, he's in a susceptible area at the Big East logo. You've got two offensive rebounders right there. That's a predictable shot. Usually good offensive rebounding teams shoot predictable shots because they know to crash, right? So in this situation, he gets the teardrop, goes it right back. But again, he gets this open because his defender's chasing over the top. Fremantle's ducking in. Again, Indiana does a pretty good job recovering and making this a difficult opportunity, but still getting in the paint. Even though it's not a great first opportunity, you're in a good rebounding spot. Same situation. Okay, they're looking. Fremantle's, he's ducking in hard, doesn't have anything. Go to Nunji. Look at his eyes. He's looking high-low. He doesn't like his angle. Okay, same thing. We're thinking zoom on the opposite end. Okay, defender does go under Kunkel on this one, but now he's got to go over Nunji, which is what you want. Same situation. Now, okay, Fremantle's ducking his guy in, does a great job. This could be a throw in on a post up. He's sealing his guy off, what have you. Again, Claude, this is a tough shot, but well executed in this situation, right? He could have maybe thrown this up to Nunji. Obviously, the guy, I forget his name, from UConn, but he's going to be a draft pick, right? Because he can play ball screen defense like this. He's huge. He's a problem.
Clinging.
But yeah, really good play here by Claude. Same situation. Again, his guy's sealed off because Fremantle's ducking in on that opposite side.
So that's an interesting two clips to show back to back, because on the first one, you've got Colby Jones running that zoom action coming downhill. Second one, you've got Desmond Claude. And one thing I've been saying a lot is I think you're going to see Desmond Claude in that Colby Jones role a lot this year, trying to get him into the same spots, the same types of actions. That's a perfect example of that right there.
Yeah, no question. And I think they obviously have really similar games, but just from going back and watching these synergy clips, Desmond Claude's got unbelievable change of direction. He can go from fast to slow. Really, he can really turn on the jets very, very quickly. I think they're similar stage of, like, they got to show that they can improve as jump shooters. I don't think Claude is quite to that level as Colby is a passer right now, but I do think he has more burst north and south than Colby does. So, but all in all, I completely agree. They're going to be a lot in this playmaking, get the ball downhill, get paint touches in transition and in flow. They both do a really good job putting pressure in the rim as a playmaker in the offense. So, okay, here's another one, right? You're in transition. Nunji, first thing he's looking high low to Jerome, doesn't have it. Okay, they go back into a zoom. Guy goes over. Nunji doesn't go over Fremantle, but at the same time, look at Jerome. He's posting up. He's at the Big East logo. Okay, Nunji's defender in this situation, right? He's worried about Nunji as a lob threat. Nunji did a great job catching lobs all season. He's worried about getting back to him, but just forcing that defender over the screen, that gives Colby just that half step. Okay, now you've got Boom in the corner. That guy certainly still, you don't let Boom get catch and shoot threes, so you're putting guys in positions of strength. You've got Colby driving the ball downhill, which, again, is obviously one of the things he does very best. He's able to get all the way into the rim for a layup. Same situation, right? Freeman will just open it up. Second time in that game that Boom just gets a wide open layup on that side of the rim, on that side of the court, because guys at the rim are doing a terrific job posting up. Okay, now you'll see, okay, reversal. Last couple of clips, they've gone to what it would have been the two-man side. So on the top, you see you got Boom, you've got Colby. Okay, in this situation, they go to the one-man side. This offense has options. I don't know exactly when they go to what, why they go to. I don't know if it's calls. I don't know if it's I don't know if it's feel. To be honest, if I did know that, I'm sure they would not appreciate me sharing that in this context. But point being is this is not just, hey, reverse the ball, go zoom. You'll see in this situation, Fremantle comes back to Kunkel. They get into a DHO, which is short for a designated handoff. So you're going to hear DHO a lot. Okay, he gets into the DHO to Kunkel. Kunkel gets the edge on Hawkins. And you'll watch Jerome here does a great job. It looks like an offensive tackle getting a holding call in the NFL. But he's kind of holding on. He knows he doesn't have the position to seal. He's taught, okay, Kunkel comes downhill. You got to duck that guy in. He just kind of holds on to that guy for one split second. You get Kunkel coming down Main Street for a drive. Here they're in flow. Again, just because you don't have something on one side in this offense, you're continually getting reversal. You don't have something. Let's throw it to the big, reverse the ball, get to an option on the other side. Okay, in this situation, okay, it's not necessarily cookie cutter like exactly how they maybe drew it up, but it's not a zoom. It's not a one-man side DHO. Now you've got Boom on that side. It just ends up being a DHO with Colby. Again, he's got a big on him, takes him off the bounce. He's got Alex Caravan, who's really more at UConn for his offense. Again, that's a switch that UConn most likely does not want. And then you've got Fremantle holding off Sonogo, right, as one of the physically most gifted players in the country at that position. Does a great job holding them off. Colby, great job landing on two, under control, finishing. Obviously, this was a strength of his and ultimately the team's this year. Here's a set play. Trying to get Boom a three. Okay. Well guarded by Creighton first time around. What are we doing? We're back in the flow. Just that other option, right, to get into it. Okay, reverse the ball through the big. He's playing to the two-man side. Okay, doesn't like what he has. Reverse it. Same sort of thing, right? Okay, you've got Kalkbrenner, one of the best shot blockers in the country. Okay, 7 foot, whatever he is. Cesar does a great job. Take him out of the play. You don't want him contested that shot against Des Claude. Gets a layup.
So, Trey, one of the things that I think is kind of interesting to point out is Xavier's offense. It's kind of structured. It's structured in the sense that you have options and you're given options of what you should do in certain situations. But it's also, I guess the way to describe it is it's an if-then offense, meaning you have different options. So you might, as a big, you catch the top of the key, you might be able to reverse it. You might be able to go dribble handoff. As the wing, if you catch the ball, you might have 2 or 3 different options. But each time you do something, you choose one of those options, it then triggers the other options for the other guys on the court, right? And I mean, I think that's kind of a good way to think at it. So what you end up with is someone like us who's watching right now. If you're a fan, you're thinking, wait, how do you keep any of this straight? Or if you're another team trying to scout it, it's like, well, it looks very random. What they're doing looks very random, but to them, they know it's like, well, if my teammate does this, I'm doing one of these few things. Correct? Is that a good way to kind of lay it out?
Absolutely, and that's just done with a lot of repetition, right? That this is something I'm sure they're practicing. If I had to guess, they're probably doing this a little bit in team settings in the summer. The way workouts are structured, right? You get 4 hours on the court in the summer, 4 hours on the court in the fall. Most teams are going to put in some sort of install. Offensively, for example, like when we went back in, I think it was probably 2019 or something like that, we went to Spain, and that entire trip offensively was devoted to the flow we had in at that time. So coaches know that flow can be a hard thing to get down, and I'm sure that's something they've been doing. Like I said, this summer, they're probably getting ready to do it as the fall semester starts. So when they get into day one of practice, I doubt, right, this is the first time that any freshman or transfer has any idea of what this flow is, because yes, it isn't if this, then that sort of offense, right? Where, okay, if the defense has this coverage, this is our answer. If they're playing in this coverage, they have this intercept. They're kind of helping it on the post. Like you said, it's going to open up different opportunities throughout. And you need smart players in an offense like this who know how to play. And obviously, I think Colby, right? He's one of the best in the country at just playing basketball. He's got terrific basketball feel. I think Kunkel is also in that category, right? Terrific basketball feel. He just makes plays without thinking. And then Boom probably was the third most natural, but he's one of the best shot makers in the country. And it was natural in his element. So, and then obviously Nungy and Fremantle, maybe the most skilled combination of 4 and 5 in the country that I've gone through and watched everybody, but you've got just a ton of skill, not necessarily a ton of athletic. I wouldn't say this is the most athletic team, and that's why we say they're playing a little bit faster than average, probably faster than most teams with the athleticism they had across the board. But this is ultimate skill, and like we said, it was a good fit for their personnel this past year, and that's why I'll be interested going forward to see if they always stick with this, or do they try to recruit to this or that, and things of that nature. So another option on the duck in, right now we've seen all the flow, duck in, holding off drives, giving guards opportunities for lips. This guard can also just throw it into a post up. So okay, same sort of situation. We've got a DHO at the top. Okay, Colby doesn't really feel like he's got any sort of great driving lane, but Zach, terrific positioning. They just throw that ball right in. Terrific pass from Zach. And again, he's able to get in there low because, to your point earlier, Rick, right, he's got Jeremiah Davenport on him. Jeremiah Davenport, Moeller kid, he is a wing, right? He is considered to be probably a small forward if you want to put it in those terms. Yes, do teams have it in mind for him to guard multiple positions? Absolutely. That's asking a lot to guard a guy like Zach. Now you've got the center who has to come over and help. Nungy wide open dunk. Here's another situation where they're going from an under out of bounds. Okay. Trying to get Kunkel a shot. Don't have it. What do? They go right into a flow. Reverse the ball. This is quick, right? There's not a whole lot of holding it. A little bit of dribbling here, but at the same time, they still know exactly, like you can tell they always knew what the options were within this offense. So even though Claude gets stuck dribbling here a little bit, like he still knows Nungy's going in for this post up. He may have a drive. He gets cut off. Yeah, is that the best spacing ever for a post pass? Maybe not, but you get a really good player with the ball on the block. Again, Nungy, terrific player. Reverse, high-low, don't have it. Throw it across. Now you're in a one-man ball screen. Throw it in. Again, I was really impressed with Jerome in these situations. Really impressed. Can also hit the roll man. Okay, so again, option one, we talked about. Kunkel drives in layup. Option two, Fremantle will be ducking in on that opposite block. Roll man is also an option, right? There's Trey Jackson Davis for Indiana. Again, one of the best ball screen defenders I saw all year, right? That's going to be one of his main things he can do in Golden State. It's probably one of the main reasons he was drafted. But Nungy, terrific lob threat. He's got great timing on his jumps, terrific touch, obviously great size and length. Terrific pass here from Kunkel. But again, you see here, Trey Jackson, it's just that one step forward. That one step forward. That's a left-handed pass from Kunkel, and this is where I talk about, like, not many guys can just come off with their weak hand and throw a little lob like that. So that's what's going to be interesting, again, going forward to see how this new wave of players is handling things in this offense. But terrific pass from Kunkel. Great roll by Nungy, and great play. Same sort of thing. Again, Kunkel can really pass the ball in these situations, man. Really pass the ball. Same exact situation. Get a lob to Nungy again. There's Kunkel again. Little pocket pass. Zach taking his time. And again, if we roll this back, okay, there's a switch. You get Jordan Hawkins, who again is one of the best players in the country, but I don't think that UConn's going in that game wanting Jordan Hawkins too much on Fremantle. You force the switch. In an emergency, good screens force switches, right? If you don't set good screens, you don't force switches, guys can keep their matchups. Really good job by Zach overall there. Okay, this one's going to be an aggressive coverage, kind of like we were talking about earlier, Rick, in the middle third of the court. So you'll see here, we're in the middle third exactly with Colby. One of these bigs from Pittsburgh. He's trying to force Colby to the timeline, to half court. He's trying to get in his chest, make it difficult for Colby to make any play, trying to buy a second for that guard to get back into it. Okay. Now Nungy's rolling. You see on the backside, you've got someone guarding the post on Jerome. he feels like he's probably can't help on Nunji. Or because Jerome's right there. He's probably, if he helps up, Colby's probably going to throw a little touch pass right to Jerome for a layup. Now you've got somebody on the backside who's thinking, okay, Kunkel, really good shooter. Do I help? Do I bump Nunji? He bumps for 1 second. He thinks, okay, he's got time to get back. He's like, okay, I helped. Now I better get back, or Kunkel's going to get a three. And again, the big for Pittsburgh, they don't do a great job of communicating or rotating, and just that split second of not getting back. That's why guarding in that middle third, ball screens can be really, really tough with an aggressive ball screen coverage. Like, for example, certain teams, they may have an aggressive ball screen coverage on the sideline, all right, in those outer thirds. You get to the middle third, they have a completely different coverage because you can just see those rotations are very confusing. Does Pittsburgh execute that at a 10 out of 10? No, but you want things defensively that are simplified, easy to understand, and there's a tax for everything, right? So, okay, we want to be aggressive. We don't want Colby to be comfortable. We want to force him out to half court as the ball handler. The tax you're paying for that is now you got to rotate to kind of recover in that situation. They made it.
Can you go back to that clip real quick, just the end of it?
Yeah.
Because something you've been saying a lot with the tax situation. So look at the spacing in this, right? You have Nunji rolling down right to where Jerome's sealing that man. And you're right. I mean, like, that's not, when you look at it, it's like, well, technically, I mean, they've kind of got this to where you can take away the passing lane up at the top of the key here. You've kind of got two can guard one there in the post for a second and hold this if it's not a great pass. But Xavier is so disciplined and they're so cognizant of what they're looking for and where they're trying to attack you that Colby just waits a split second, say, wait, you're gonna move, you're gonna relocate and go try to find a man here after you bump the roller. He just waits that split second for Nunji to open back up and then throws it to the weak side block. I mean, again, that's just having a really good understanding of what you're trying to accomplish within the offense.
No doubt. No doubt. And pretty much every clip we've seen, most of these teams are trying to get over with their guard. Again, whether this is scouting report to try to keep matchups, or rather this is just guys getting caught underneath, going under on threes. They did a good job converting, right? You see Greg Elliott, he goes under on Kunkel. Again, just no hesitation. Kunkel sits behind that three ball, right? And when you're going over, these clips where we picked clips of Xavier scoring, right? But they did a good job getting defenders on their hips, getting downhill, which ultimately offers up all these different scenarios, right, where help is forced or what have you. Some teams will go under on everything. They'd rather force a sit behind three. That's just philosophy. You don't see that a ton. You may see teams do that to specific personnel. You don't see it a ton where a team only does that. Shooters are getting better and better and better. But some coaches think analytically, I'd rather a three off the dribble with somewhat of a hand versus anything else. So they did a pretty good job making teams pay on this. Here's a reversal. Again, this could be a scouting report thing from DePaul. Go under on Colby Jones, make him beat you make him beat the shot. Any other way, he's elite. Guy goes under, boom. If Colby can make that shot right, he's going to make a lot of money in the NBA if he can make that shot. A lot, because he just does everything else so dang well. Okay, here's just some clips of some overplays, all right? So, again, sometimes you'll see this defender from Villanova. He's maybe playing on the high side, trying to take away that handoff. Some teams will try to get physical. Obviously, we're showing all these clips of it looks free-flowing because these are good clips. Teams may try to jam that up. Okay, what's a counter to jamming that up? That guy's kind of in the passing lane. Colby back cuts. Terrific pass from Nunji. In the UC game in particular, they really tried to get physical with Xavier. Probably of the games I really, sat the time and watched, at least on Synergy, more than any other team. They got very, very physical on the perimeter. They tried to take away these handoffs. Xavier did a pretty good job countering and going back door on a lot of stuff, right? So again, Claude's not even really thinking back door, but he just kind of keeps playing. Again, there's this change of direction from him that's just so impressive in my opinion. Hey, stop. Hey, that guy goes back. Hey, I'm going right back downhill on you. So dang strong. Again, but just different options. If this, then that. Kind of like we're saying. If they're overplaying, if they're overhelping, if they're jamming it up, what's the option? A lot of times you got to backdoor teams like that. This clip, you got 3 ball reversals here. Again, Any offense, pretty much every team is tracking this to some way. Obviously, there's new technology. Since I left Xavier in 21, that right when I was leaving, teams are starting to acquire technology on the bench. You'll see people with iPads, right? And it's usually a lot very generic statistics. One of those statistics that companies are right. There's different companies that you can sign a deal with. They'll provide us how many points per possession are we getting off ball reversals, right? So a lot of times, in transition, that's its own category. Colby might drive down the lane, right, get a layup. But once you hit the half court, 0 ball reversals, right, it's not usually a great points per possession. 1 ball reversal goes higher. 2, it goes higher. 3, right, if teams averaged, if you took every team's points per possession with 3 ball reversals, they'd be the top offensive team in the country. Easier said than done, right? But I've always viewed as a kind of a generic statistic, but it can be a good thing, right? To go in the huddle or at halftime or talk to a player in a team meeting, say, hey, listen, guys, like just really spell it out for the players. But that's a statistic that's always available.
That's another terminology moment here too. A lot of times you'll hear broadcasters, even coaches in interviews saying, we need to play on multiple sides of the floor, or we need to get to multiple sides of the floor. That goes back to the dividing it into thirds thing, right? So you're saying ball reversals, you play to the right side, you reverse it back to the left side. Well, now you've played on 2 sides, right? And you want to get it to multiple sides, get the defense moving before you really set into your actions a lot of times.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, if a defense is just sitting there and if your player's in the corner and the ball's on either wing, hey, this is where I'm standing. And any defense, you have your rules. The more the ball reverses, guys are cutting, you're constantly changing, where you're at on the floor, right? It becomes tougher and tougher. And that the more decisions the defense has to make, the more communication, the more opportunities that they're going to make an error. And quite frankly, offensively, Quinn Snyder's always talked a lot about this, but he talks about the ball as energy. Like he wants multiple guys touching the ball on multiple sides of the court. Guys don't want to – everybody's played pickup basketball. You don't want to run to the corner and not touch the ball 7 times, right? You're not going to have as much energy. So that's kind of another holistic view of an offense like this is you want everybody touching the ball. And, again, this isn't unique to Xavier. I think most college teams and coaches would agree you want a lot of guys touching the ball, right? But Xavier did a really good job executing this past season. Here's Zach on a pick and pop 3. Again, you didn't see this a ton this year. I think this was just like a philosophical choice. Like we are going to duck in, we are going to roll. Every once in a while, you see a pop. And this is a naked side. So by a naked side, what we mean here is it's empty. There's nobody in that corner on the strong side corner by the X. You look at the X and Xavier on the baseline. So if Zach pops, that's tough help for anybody. If anybody's going to get there, it's probably going to be Jordan Hawkins, who's next to the Big East logo. Some teams will teach that. Very, very difficult to execute in a game. Very difficult. So, again, you're putting UConn in a tough spot, probably not expecting it because that's not really the meat and potatoes of what they did, but that's what they got there. Okay, now, under out of bounds. Don't have it. That was a little flare screen trying to get Nunji a design 3. Okay? Just that little bit of confusion, though, they get a switch. Now he's got a point guard on him. Look at Nunji. Excuse me. He's got a point guard on him. He knows it. He goes right into the post. Good recognition by Claude. Again, forcing switches in this defense, it will really, really, really put teams in a bind. You don't want to switch. Okay, obviously you hope that we talked about. You get guys on your hip. You're Colby Jones. You're going downhill in the DHO or these zoom actions, right? Hopefully you're creating some sort of advantage that way. When teams switch, which is becoming ever popular in basketball as well, you're trying to take away any of those advantages. Hey, I don't have to go over or under. I'm just there. But some of these best teams, right, you're attacking switches throughout their flow. So that's just Nunji, great recognition, knowing he's got a guard on him, and then they just throw it right into him. Here's another situation where they utilize a switch, okay? Big switches on to Kunkel. He keeps the ball moving. Again, just that split second of having a big. Hey, you got Trey Galloway guarding Kunkel. Again, I went to Indiana, so I'm familiar with their team. Watched them too. But Galloway's very smart. Coach's son, he knows exactly what to do against a guy like Kunkel. Well, now you get Race Thompson, who's usually guarding a big bruiser, right, for the other team. He's in a gap against Kunkel. He's not used to that. Again, there's Colby. It doesn't seem like a big deal, but see a wide open guy with a big on him, throws it right to him. Kunkel makes him pay. Another opportunity. Hey, I get a guard on a big, I might throw it inside. But on the flip side, now you got a big guy guarding in perimeter space. That's probably not where Race is most familiar or comfortable guarding either. So
And that's something that, like you said, every team wants to take advantage. If they get a switch, they feel like they have a mismatch. They want to take advantage of that, obviously. But I would say being around a little bit last year, seeing Xavier in action, seeing them practice everything, that is something that they really prioritize. Is if you get that switch and you don't throw it to that guy to take advantage of it, you're not playing for us. Like, that is just not how we do things. We want to punish the defense every single time we get that opportunity.
yep, absolutely. And the last thing, just a couple set plays. They had a couple different variations. I think this one, teams will call it stack or two stack, whatever. You just put two players at the free throw line. And they went to this a lot of times in big situations. Really played through Colby here, had a couple different little sets, played through Boom a little bit as well. But this is like, hey, we're not necessarily worried about getting into flow here. We just want our top guys touching the ball. Okay, that's a little Spain action that they did, which, again, we could get into that at a later time. But for the most part, right here, okay, this game, I remember they were up pretty big. I had this on. I was on the road coaching the game that day, and I was watching this in the hotel room. I believe this game had a pretty big point differential, started to get close. It's like, okay, we want to slow the game down and put the ball in Colby Jones's hands. So, again, everybody on Xavier knows exactly what's happening here. Getting Colby as easy of a catch as you can. Let him play in the ball screen because, again, he's terrific in ball screens. Again, great take and one. Didn't see sets, I would have to say, in the half court. I'd hate to put a percentage on it. It definitely feels like it's less than 50% that they would get into a set. A lot of times, again, they're looking for those duck-ins, reversals, and get right into their flow. But we've seen all throughout this edit, there's times that they're into something, whether it's transition, whether they are in a set and they end up flowing anyway. So they're flowing well over 50% of possessions, right, between all those three opportunities. Again, just a little different set play. Gets blocked, but pretty good set. So, but yeah, that's all I got. That's all I got.
Okay, so let's wrap this up real quick because we've been going for a while. I don't want to keep you too much longer here, Trey. But your big takeaways here, if you're wrapping this up for Xavier fans, and we can even pull this up here while we're talking about it. Look at Ken Palm here, but if you look at Sean Miller. Last year at Xavier's offensive efficiency was 8th in the country. Now, Sean Miller's obviously had some really good offenses in the past. He had, I don't know if you guys can see that or if it's too small, but he was
yeah.
Okay, so his last year at Arizona, they were 15th in the country, but prior to that, it's 35th, 153rd, 15th, 15th, 20. So he's definitely had good offenses. This was one of his best. They were an elite offense in the country. What stood out to you about this Sean Miller team and all the stuff that you just broke down? If you were trying to sum it up in a few takeaways, were there any big picture things that you would add on there or give to fans as a takeaway?
Yeah, I mean, nothing I haven't already said, but I think how quickly they flowed is probably one of the more underrated keys, right? They just got into things so quickly. Teams didn't really have time to think. You just didn't see them sit with the ball at half court and the point guard calling stuff out, them taking forever to line up. They just played fast and they played at their pace, right? I think you got to give credit to the players. Like I said, I mean, Colby, Kunkel, Boom, those guys did terrific jobs making decisions, and then having, like we've said it a million times, but Fremantle and Nunji had terrific seasons, particularly when they're on the floor together. Jerome came in. He did a great job taking over Fremantle's spot offensively. So between that and just their identity, I think as a duck-in team, I think that can be hard to buy in. Like I said, it's not sexy, right? To be a duck-in guy, and that's you're not getting all the love, and I've never heard an uncle after a game, oh my gosh, man, you were ducking them in like crazy, creating so many opportunities. That's what I tell players that I coach all the time. It's like you're not going to get notoriety. Your family's not going to put in the family group text or in the car after the game. You're not going to get credit for this, but they did those things that can be really, really important. And then obviously, right, they shot the cover off the ball. We didn't get into a ton of that. Their volume wasn't high necessarily in how many threes that they took, but they were very efficient. I believe they were, top 5, top 10 in the country. A lot of that was Soleil Boom. We didn't hit on Boom a ton in this edit, right? But Boom was a guy who just made plays on his own. Step back threes, transition. when stuff broke down. He is a tough shot maker, and so probably should have included him more in the edit, but he was just a big part of when things broke down and things were happening. He just kind of made shots, and I thought that was a big difference maker for him. So.
Yeah. Well, there you go. I mean, Trey, that was really good stuff. I appreciate you doing that deep dive into the offense. We just kind of wanted to give you guys, because it was talked so much about Sean Miller's new offense and how he tweaked things in his second time around here at Xavier. And, I think everyone has always thought Sean Miller is a really good coach, but I think a lot of people had the opinion that he was more of a defensive-minded coach. And to see him in a second stint at Xavier come out, and Xavier's one of the elite offenses in the country, and they're really a team that almost traded some defensive things to be better offensively last year. It was interesting to watch. So getting that breakdown from you was really good stuff. Thanks, Trey.
Oh, thanks for having me. That was a blast.
All right. So our plan is to do some more stuff like this throughout the season. You'll come up with some ideas of things to take a look at, maybe some breakdowns, and we'll try to do this periodically throughout the year and give you guys some new content. So again, Trey, thank you, and we'll see you again soon.
Thanks so much.